My name is Winifred Phillips, and I am a composer for video games. I've had the privilege to work on a lot of very exciting projects and be really inspired by my work. I've done music for, most recently, Little Big Planet 2, and before that, The Legend of the Guardians, and amongst other projects I've worked for a couple of projects for Maxis, Sim Animals and Spore Hero, and before that a lot of movie tie-ins, Speed Racer, The Da Vinci Code, Shrek the Third, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and of course my first project, which was the biggest deal for me, was God of War. I've always been really fascinated by music from as far back as I can remember. My first instrument was, I think, a xylophone. So it was the first instrument of a lot of people, but it's the one I remember, and I spent hours and hours on it as a kid. It was fascinating for me. And then onwards to piano, and then voice, which I trained in classically. I've been lucky in that I've had a lot of really great teachers. I went up through the public school system, and at a time when music education in public schools was really valued, and I had some really influential teachers and some people who tried to bring out in me what they saw, that kind of potential. Teachers who just threw lots of different instruments at me and said, learn these. And I think having that broad experience with music was what made me interested in creating music. When you can touch on all of the various aspects of music, then you see how it all comes together, and the possibilities are very exciting. And I think that was where I started thinking about being a composer. I think more about what would be really fun to learn how to play. I mean, I'd love to learn theremin. I mean, I've seen them played on YouTube videos. Oh my goodness, it looks like so much fun. I'd love to play that. And flexitone, and waterphone. Oh, those are great. They're just such wild-looking instruments, and just the opportunity to play them. You know, in projects I've worked on, I've had the opportunity to make a lot of weird sounds with just household instruments. For the MAW, I was doing sounds with garbage can lids and plungers and styrofoam cups. So you never know what opportunities are going to come, and you know, I think musical sound can come from all sorts of different found sound sources, and I think the sounds of your environment can be very musically inspiring. When you've exceeded the expectations of someone that you really respect, I mean, and that's when you feel that, you know, like your heart beats in your chest, like, oh. Most recently on the Legend of the Guardians project, that was a competitive audition for that project, but it was just a small handful of composers. I was familiar with the works of Catherine Lasky, the book series Guardians of Ga'Hoole, so it's a wonderful high fantasy world that she created, and so it was really exciting to be able to audition for that. And I submitted some music for that project, and then, you know, you're waiting and you're, pins and needles, and I found out later, after I'd been told that I was put on the project, that Zack Snyder, the director of the films, had made that decision himself, and he'd said that the music that I'd submitted had the right gravitas. And you know, I knew his work, and it's a real vision that he has, and just to be able to please someone with that kind of inspiration that's a really fond memory. You know, it's a weird story. It's probably different from the way most people get into video games. I've been working in radio. Series called Radio Tales. It was for National Public Radio, and I worked with my longtime music producer, Winnie Waldron. We actually worked for the first time on that series. It was her baby. She was script editing it, and she was hosting it, and it was adaptations of classic short stories and novels like War of the Worlds and Dracula, Frankenstein, Time Machine, Homer's Odyssey. It's just really fun work. And as a part of that, my music was heard by Victor Rodriguez at Sony Computer Entertainment America. that was when he was music supervisor there, and he asked if we could meet at E3, which we did in 2004. And so he took us into the E3 show floor, Winnie and I, and showed us God of War and said, what do you think about working on this, on contributing some music to it? And I remember what that game looked like, and I wasn't really that familiar with it at the time. Afterwards I found out what the huge buzz was going on around that game, but at the time I wasn't that familiar with it. So just watching it, and it's really different for its time. Even when you look back on it now and you see how cohesive everything is, how everything pulls together into this one solid vision of this mythological story being told. And that's when I really got intrigued about creating music for video games. I mean, I've just gotten finished working on things like Beowulf and Jason and the Argonauts, so it was right up our alley. And I asked Winnie to come with me and work on God of War, because I wouldn't imagine working without her. And we did that. My goodness, what a great way to begin. I can't imagine a better way to start. And I think that was the fuel that fired our engine. We've been running on that ever since. I think in its odd way, video game work compares more closely to radio work, because in both mediums, the music is sort of tasked to take over some of the action. Of course, in radio, music is telling you what the visual component would have given you. It's creating a sense of the kinetics of how things are moving, and what the pacing is, how the whole experience is being shaped, where you would have received that kind of information visually in television and film. And I think in games, music also serves that purpose, because so much of the actual pacing is in the hands of the player, and the experience varies from one player to another. So in order to create a sense of cohesiveness artistically, and to help the player understand what the mood is and how the kinetics should feel, what the energy level is, music steps in there and kind of helps the player to feel the energy of the room, so to speak. Because the music in games is interactive, it is more of a challenge to write. It needs to be very sensitive to what the player needs. Sometimes it's informational. The music will tell you what's going to happen, will give you clues. Sometimes it plays a direct role in the mechanics of gameplay, such as in God of War with the Siren song, when that track I wrote, when you follow the siren's voice across the desert. That's a specific gameplay mechanic. It's a more direct hand-in-hand relationship between the creators and the players, as opposed to music for television and film, where the relationship is one way. There isn't a back and forth. So I like to think of it, when I'm creating music, as a conversation between myself and the person playing the game, that imaginary person who is having that experience. What I'm doing is half of the conversation, and what they'll do is the other half. And if I'm doing my job right, then they'll feel that conversation and feel an active role in it. And so that's the way I like to imagine it when I'm working. Depends on the project. I like to start with research. My music producer, Winnie Waldron, and I do a lot of that together. She was a script editor, so she has a really great sense of the shape of a story and the needs of pacing. And so we like to look at the source material. We've had some great source material in the Speed Racer project. It was the original manga. And with the Da Vinci Code, it was the novel of Dan Brown. Of course, for Legend of the Guardians, it was Catherine Lasky's wonderful book series. The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we were reading Roald Dahl, and that was great fun. Of course, with film tie-in properties, it is the artistic vision of the film. And so that plays into requesting art assets from the developer and looking at what the overall aesthetic is going to be. And that makes a big difference in how the musical approach is going to be taken. We like to see design documents, which is great, because then you can look at what the aspiration is for the game, what the vision is in the minds of the developers, where they want to go. And we can read the whole thing. I like to take a look at it and try to imagine as much as possible what the final result's going to be. Because you know that with any artistic endeavor, there is always a gold ring that you're reaching for. And you know that that gold ring is sparkling in the mind of the people you're working with. And what I want to do is see the gold ring as clearly as I possibly can before I start reaching for it. So that research process is very important, as much time as I can give to it. Then afterwards, I'll start looking into musical styles and forms. You know, what will serve the mood and the momentum? With SimAnimals, it was post-minimalism, that sense of kind of suspended consciousness that you get with the repeating forms and the slowly building textures of that kind of composition. And it mirrors the sense of a simulation game. Because you do, when you're in the zone in a simulation game, that it's a complexity but also a conscious simplicity, because you can center yourself and be aware of everything at the same time and then react. And I felt musically that sense of post-minimalism was going to work really well with that. With the Maw, it was this really punchy jazz, where you're talking about a walking mouth. And when we first saw the first images of the Maw kind of, you know, grooving around the stage, he has this wonderful walk where he sort of bounces, and he's got this puppy dog look to him where he's walking around, and it's got this jazzy groove to it you can almost feel as you see him moving. And so it would seem to me that it was going to be jazz for that. And that's the kind of kernel of the beginning of the process. And then it's just kind of hunkering down to start creating the musical assets from day to day and realizing that vision that you hoped you got right at the beginning. You know, and not so far. I like being challenged. It keeps me fresh. You know, when every day is unexpected, that's when the work is at its most exciting. The chance to think about music in a different way. What is the role of music in any project? And each developer thinks about it differently. They all have a different conception of what music should do. Should it be just creating a sense of atmosphere of this is where you are? Or should it be taking you by the hand, this is where you should go? Or should it be just making a statement, this is what you should pay attention to? And music can do all of those things, and it can do more. It can put your mind in a particular mindset. This is how you should be thinking. It can try to create a sense of that in the zone that you get when you're really enveloped by the game. This is what you're doing now. And each project has an opportunity to find out what else music can do. I'm constantly fascinated by that. I think that game music is going to become a bigger part of the music community as games grow, and they're certainly growing. It's become such an important part of culture, and the gaming demographic, as it gets older and broader, permeates more of society. So there really isn't anywhere you can escape from video games anymore, if you'd want to. So, and the music, as it matures, and I'm constantly amazed by the accomplishments in video game music, as it becomes more astonishing to people when they're experiencing these works of art. They'll see what's happening in the music side. And I think that it will become more recognized to the casual gamer, to people who are just playing these games. They'll see that the music is enhancing their experience. You know, I guess I'm ashamed to say it, but most of what I've been listening to has been music suggested to me by developers for projects. I am exposed to a lot of music via the developer saying, we're thinking about a style kind of like this, and they'll point me to something and I'll listen to it. Oh, how about this thrash metal? What about this math rock? Bebop, hey. And so I've got an iPod stuffed with all different kinds of music. The post-minimalism is they're a big part of my iPod, but there are a lot of film and TV scores in there too. And Dizzy Gillespie is in there, Rachel Portman, Ann Dudley, but also there's Atlas, and there's a lot of different kinds of music, which is great because every time I come across music that way, I always think of it in terms of what can I do next? And you look at what other people are doing, and as a composer, you have an ear that's sort of trained like a chef's palate is trained. You try to kind of break it down into all of the kind of the spices and the textures and the flavors, and get a sense of how everything is built up. And then when you want to put together your own recipe, you remember all of the different dishes you've tasted, and then you try to apply a new spin on all of the stuff that you've heard. And of course, all this stuff sort of percolates in your subconscious while you're sleeping. And you know, I like to think of the music as having a conversation in my head and saying, well, what about me? I could work with you. And last project, Little Big Planet, was a great opportunity to really mix types of music that just you don't hear together at all. Like the Little Big Planet Victoria's Loud track, I got a chance to combine fugato with a really fierce rock. And it's just not something that you normally hear together. And it was a great opportunity to experiment, to do something that felt fresh to me. That whole project was just like that. Little Big Planet is a really creative environment. And every aspect of it encourages you to stretch. As a player and as a creator, being a part of it, it's the same environment. And I like to think of it like that. It's this one beautiful little circle of creativity that just keeps going around and around, feeding itself. And it was great to be a part of that, and I'm hoping to continue to be. I would say the most important thing as an inspiring musician in this industry, you've got to build up your rig, you've got to know your technology and your tools. It's very important. Composers are like a one-man, one-woman shop. We're expected to deliver the whole package. And the better we can do that, the better our tools are, the better the final product's going to be. So you have to be willing to go get what you need, and that can be daunting. But it's kind of the price we pay at the beginning for the work that we do. And as far as artistically, it's a different road for every type of music. I started in God of War, so it was a symphonic road for me. And someone who would start with a project that was more DJ influenced would have a completely different road, would be working with different kinds of developers, so I can't speak to that. I can say that it's important to keep trying. You can hit walls, and it's discouraging. But it's important to just keep getting yourself out there. Game conferences, industry conventions, they're very key. You got to meet people. It's important for people to associate your face with what you do, because music is a difficult thing to conceptualize. You hear it, but then it's hard to imagine it integrated into your vision, and to be able to speak to someone on a one-on-one basis about how these ideas can come together, that means a lot. So that's very important. And the last thing that I can say is the person who wins is the one that keeps playing. So if you just keep playing, and don't work for free. That's one other thing, and I know a lot of composers want to do it. It's very tempting. There are a lot of projects out there saying, I'm looking for some music, if you could just donate. And sure, that's a way to learn, and if that's what you're there for, that's great. But I've never seen it get anyone anywhere career-wise. If you value yourself, you value your art. and your art has value. And I think that the person you're working with should see that, or they won't value you or your art. So try not to work for free unless you're just doing it to learn. Then work for free all you want.